So, you want to make a film with some guns. Well, do I have the video for you. So, the first step is to secure some nice props. I find a metal air canister airsoft tends to be the best. It has a nice weight to it, feels very realistic and makes the acting much better, and thus the effects. But you can make a spray-painted Nerf gun work in a pinch too. Safety insert. Make sure if you're using realistic looking gun props that you're very careful with where and how you use them. There's three different things to consider. Well, there's three different things to consider while filming. Shot types, gun types, and acting. Being really far away is very different from being close. Another thing to consider is gun types. A pistol fires very differently from a fully automatic assault rifle. Another very vital thing about gunshots is acting. Bang, bang, bang! It's not very good, and while it's very tempting to use your mouth, it looks very silly. If you can restrain yourself, this looks a lot better. And with acting, another important thing is getting your recoil right. I find a lot of people are tempted to do up motion, where they feel like someone's pushing up on the barrel. I find it tends to look better if you imagine someone's pushing on your hand, like this. However, you also want to make it look like you're pushing back on that imaginary hand. So you're pushing forward back against it, and you kind of get that motion. And then a quick note about automatic firing. I find don't try to think about individual shots where you're like quickly doing that. I find to just rattle your gun kind of back and forth. So you get this kind of, that tends to be the best for automatic fire. When it comes to VFX, there's a big truck in the background, so we'll want to do this shot again. And another quick note on acting is to think about your gun posture when your gun is not actually in use. Are they a trained soldier who holds it very properly? And you might want to do some research on how to actually hold a gun properly if that's the case. Or is it an inexperienced kind of gangster that's holding all around and maybe not having the best gun etiquette? And you got to really think about who your character is, what situation they're in, and how would they hold a gun. So this might be a video for another time. However, getting your actors when they're being hit to act well is also very important. Obi. Bang, bang. Down, over. Good job. Now he's eating poop. Great. Now let's go to what you actually came here for, visual effects. Welcome to the editing. Welcome to the editing suite. First step, put on your headphones. Then, let's make some gun effects. Alright, so now that you've imported your file into After Effects, let's just watch it through one time, nice and clean. Another thing to consider is gun types. A pistol fires very differently from a fully automatic assault rifle. Alright, so I am using the Video Copilot Action Essentials Pack 2 muzzle flashes. However, there are lots of different options for finding muzzle flashes. I find these ones are very good and useful, but you can figure out whatever you like. So let's first do this pistol shot, and then we'll go on to the assault rifle. So finding the right muzzle flash is important. I find that pistols tend to, you want to do a kind of smaller flare. I think this one seems pretty good. So let's drop that on there. So that'll be what usually it'll look like when you drop a muzzle flash on it. So often you can press W to get to the rotate tool, and then V to go back to your move tool. So move your gun effect kind of into place. I know there's this little bit right here. I'm going to move this because it kind of looks a little weird if you leave that on there. And then I am putting it into subtract mode, my mask, and then I'm going to press F and just drop a little feather on there. This way the muzzle flash will be balanced and positioned a little better. Just about right there. And this, I will just show you what just this looks like. A pistol, it's not great. It's starting to get there. What I find, you want to put the actual effect right on where the gun is kind of starting to move back whenever the recoil starts. And you'll have to interpret where you want to put that recoil. Sometimes if you have like someone getting hit, you want to line that up correctly. So for this one, we need to make this into something a bit better. So let us start out with a couple effects. First up, I like to go over here, get a fastbox blur, and let's put this to about 4. That should be good. And then another important thing is this mode down here. Put this to add. That is absolutely vital. Otherwise it won't look as good. And then let's do one more effect. Let's go down here to stylize. And let us put on a glow. I tend to mess around with the radius a bit. Make it a lot bigger. On this shot I'm going to bring it up. I usually bring the radius up a bunch. And then that kind of gives this nice kind of glow. It makes it feel more integrated with the shot. It feels a lot brighter and more powerful. So now let's see what it looks like this. A pistol. So I'm noticing now that I probably made the effect a little too big. I didn't scale it all. So I'm going to hold shift and then I'm going to click this thing. Then I'm going to press shift. Then I'm going to scale it down. Going to make it about this size. And then let's see what it looks like there. A pistol. I feel like the smoke's a bit much, so I'm going to press T, open up the opacity. I'm going to put a keyframe on the first frame where there's the actual muzzle flash. I'm going to press Command Arrow, and then I'm going to lower the opacity to about 50 or so. I'm going to just type that in because that's easier. That way the smoke will be a little more subtle. A pistol. So I think that's feeling very good right now. That's a pretty clean effect. Let's go ahead and move on to the assault rifle. So about here is a good starting point. If you're using the Action Essentials VFX Pack 2 like I am, for the pistol, I am using Muzzle Flash 10, and then for the assault rifle, I grabbed Muzzle Flash 16, 17, and 18. They have these nice kind of like little tail things right coming off here. It just kind of looks like there's some kind of attachment that the fire is coming out of. So what I tend to do if I'm doing a lot of different gun effects, I will come over to whatever the gun effect I did first. I'll copy these effects that I put on him and then I'll paste them onto the rest of my clips. I will make sure to put them in add mode. That is very important. So then they kind of get this same effect and they're looking pretty good at the moment. So let's just grab one of them. I'm going to use 16 for this first shot, pressing W to rotate, and then let's put this in position. So we're going to line this up right on the barrel. That's looking pretty good. Maybe I'm going to stretch it out, make it a little wider, a little bigger. That seems pretty clean. And then I'm going to just find all of the points where I have this like little recoil. Look for the motion blur. If there's like a gap, high motion blur tends to be the best place to put these shots on. So I just move over to my next shot, I line it up. And in this pack, to clarify before I get too far into this, in this pack there is a automatic fire clip. So let me show you what that looks like first before I get too far. So there's this automatic fire right here, and it just automatically fires for you. And I don't like to use this. I used to use this on projects like Shifting Perspectives. However, the issue with using the automatic fire is that the smoke moves around as you animate it. Sometimes this works if your camera and your gun effects is like not moving at all. So if I put this right here, and then I press P to open up position, and then I just kind of line it up every time there's a flash. This will just be enough to get the idea of why I don't like to use these. Fully automatic assault rifle! You see the smoke kind of moves around, like right here in particular, you can see the smoke moving around. I don't think that looks very good. It's not very realistic for the rest of the smoke to move around. So I tend to like to individually do each muzzle flash. It takes some extra time, but it just makes it look so much better. And I try not to put two of the same muzzle flashes right next to each other, just to help give it a little bit more variety. Automatic assault rifle! It's not looking great so far. Yeah, I think it is. I think we don't have enough motion blur on these. I find you have to tweak it around every time you do it. There's a little bit of a difference. I'm going to put this up to more like 15. Sometimes you have to modify the effects for each type of angle and position, especially if you have a low depth of field. Fully automatic assault rifle! Alright, so it's starting to feel pretty good. Now let us go in, and this may seem very tedious, but animate it. The camera doesn't move too much, so we don't really have to worry much about the camera movement, but I like to just drag it down just a little bit if the gun is moving, even though the smoke moves a bit. Just helps it move it along, kind of just give it a little bit more life. Especially when it kind of overlaps like this, getting the smoke in the right place helps. I might go back and reduce the smoke like I did for the pistol. It seems like it's a bit much. Not the frame. Don't accidentally animate your video. Animating your video to move around is not necessarily the best. Just a couple of frames, just to get that smoke to not have a big gap between the gun right away. But try not to animate the smoke too much, or it will look weird and like it's moving around and not sticking in the right place. There's a few extra things we can do. First off, I'm going to do toggle switches and modes. Just take this thing, which is basically stands for motion blur, and turn that on for all of them. That just gives a little bit more flavor to your smoke. I'm going to go ahead and go in here and do the opacity trick that I did before to reduce the amount of smoke there is. Just going to go in here and half all of the smoke. This is another thing that's an advantage of doing each gun effect individually. If you do them individually, then you can reduce the smoke on each one. If you use the automatic firing, then you can't reduce the smoke. Otherwise, your actual muzzle flashes will look weird, and then the smoke will suddenly pop back in when you're doing the muzzle flashes, and that doesn't look great. I'm going to let the last one have its full amount of smoke. Fully automatic assault rifle! I think that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and see the whole shot. Another thing to consider is gun types. A pistol fires very differently from a fully automatic assault rifle. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Then we will do sound design. That is probably one of the other most vital stages of the whole process. So I'm going to switch over to Premiere Pro to do that because I hate doing sound design in After Effects. So now let's go get some sound effects. So I am using artlist.io. That's where I get all my sound effects and music from. Not sponsored, just I really like using their stuff. So I'm going to go to the SFX page over here, and I'm just going to type in gun. That's a nice sound effect. I think I'm going to go ahead and get that one. Let's get some variety. That almost sounds like a gun. That's funny. A Bible leather hardcover flaps and closes. And it sounds like that. It's interesting when you start hearing sounds as different sounds. This is a good one. We have found our sound effects. Alright. So then I'm going to go ahead and download those. Just be a moment. So now I'm going to go ahead and throw in my different audio clips, and I'm going to decide which one I'm going to use for which thing. This first one's pretty good, and then I'm going to use these first three for the rifle. So I'm going to find exactly where the muzzle flash is. This is a pretty straightforward process. The main thing with sound design is getting good sound effects. That is the most important thing. And then there's different layering that you can do if there's a big battle with gunfire going everywhere. I'll talk a bit more about that once I start using some examples from Core. But for this case, it should be pretty simple. Is gun types. So then I'm going to press the arrow keys to just get to the right part. And then I'm going to zoom in here and just make sure I'm perfectly lined up. Just right there, that should be good. Let's see how that looks. A pistol fires... See, once I see that on there, it doesn't line up so well. I'll go ahead and do my assault rifle, but I think I'm gonna have to grab a different pistol one. It's not sounding great. And then I just drag them on. I try not to make it all the same sound effect. One other important thing, if you have multiple guns firing in one scene, make sure that you're consistent with which gun makes which sound. That sometimes can be an issue. Also, if it's a longer film, make sure each scene the sound is consistent throughout all of it. It'll just add that extra realism to your effects. So then I hold Alt, and then that copies it and moves it into a new place. I just grab which one. I'll kind of alternate between the two. One thing I like to do is kind of, with Premiere Pro, grab this little section, move it up so my video is really tiny, and then I try to give myself as much room as possible. For the recording purposes, I'm only using one monitor, so you can actually see everything that I'm using, but normally I have the 3 monitors, so I'll have the video up on the big TV screen. I'll have all of my source files on one other thing, and like the effects controls on one, and then I'll just have one giant timeline with like a little bit of video at the top, and then all audio clips at the bottom, which just helps be able to have as much room as possible to play around with layers and layers of sound effects. I'm going to go ahead and try this sound with the pistol and see if that works. Alright, so now I have a couple sounds in place. Let's just see what this sounds like. A pistol fires very differently from a fully automatic assault rifle. That's pretty cool. A couple tips. It just happens to line up that the audio is balanced perfectly from just dragging the files right in. But if you kind of have a clip that's either too loud when you drag it in or too quiet, and you have like a big automatic sequence like this and you don't want to have to manually go in, one trick that I often use is drag select all of the clips if they're all the same sound, and then there's these bracket keys that you can use, and that will change the audio. So if you use the in bracket, that'll bring the audio down. If you use the up bracket or the other bracket, the out close bracket, it'll bring the audio down. So it's a lot quieter. So if you want to mess around with the audio tuning, that's useful. So that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and pop over to Core, talk about some of the shots I did in there. But this should be basically how you do it. Apply some of these concepts in new ways and things like that. And then you should be set. So I'm going to play through a couple of shots in this scene.
It was worth a shot.
It's kind of in this shot, you have lots of different guns firing, and one trick that I used for the audio filing, as you can see down here, this gets messy. There is a ton of audio clips here. So what I did is I picked a color for each actor's guns. So like this rifle right here, this rifle right here, this pistol, this rifle here, and then also all of the off-camera guns that are firing and the tracers are coming through. I picked a sound that I wanted to go with that weapon, and then I color-coded. So like this, all of these tan-colored ones right here are lined up with this gun right here, Marcus's gun. So that helps kind of keep track if you kind of have a messy composition or way too many gun effects if you have like a big battle going on. So I'll play this one again.
It was worth a shot.
So then for this next shot, it was close enough to the rifle that I actually added a little bit of a slide action in, and the bullets fly out of it. It's a little extra detail. It can take some time to master it, but it definitely adds a little extra flair and detail to the shot. So if I look frame by frame, you can see that this little slide right here, it turns black, it opens up, and then it starts closing, and then it's fully closed. And then you can also see this bullet flying out the side right here. And it just kind of gives that extra little flare of detail. And then to show you how I did it, popping over to After Effects. So it's pretty simple. What I did, for the black part, I used a mask I took the slide action, I put a black solid over it, I put its opacity down to about 77%, put a little mask right over where I saw that the slide action was, and I took a second mask on subtract mode, and then just animate it where it was about halfway through it, so it kind of looks like it's sliding back closed, and then I just deleted it. So it's only 2 frames long. And then as for the bullet, same in the Action Essentials pack, there's a couple bullets like flying, so I just animated with motion blur. That's very important. I showed you earlier how to do that. This button right here, click that on, gives you some motion blur. I just animate it to fly off the screen, tweak around with it until you get it right. But this can be a nice extra little detail to add to some of your shots. But yeah, that should about cover everything you need to know to do some gun effects. Hopefully you have some good shooting, both with camera work and with your guns. Farewell.